Okay, long time no see. This is the point we should be at on your engine. Valve cover needs to be put on. So it should look like this. And notice the one thing that kind of tells you which way it goes is this little opening here points towards the back of the engine. So when we put the valve cover on, it needs to be pointed that way. So we need a gasket. So go into your common motor envelope and find this gasket and plop it on there. There's a right way and a wrong way. So it really only kind of fits one way. And notice that one side of this gasket has these two little holes right here. And there's one of those holes here. So whether you put it on this way or this way, you're covered. So now you take your valve cover, push it on here, and you have a bag that is probably labeled valve cover, I'm guessing. Yeah, no, yeah, where is it? Here, yes, valve cover. Should have 8 really thick washers and 8 acorn nuts in it. Go ahead and grab those. Put all the washers on. And finger tighten the acorn nuts. Now, these acorn nuts need to be tightened with a torque wrench, and beyond that fact, they also need to be tightened in a specific order. So get your torque wrench out, and you will need the 12mm socket. Now, if you look at your manual, your climber manual, turn to page 76. Down in the bottom right is this diagram of the top of your engine. And I'm looking at the engine in the same perspective that the drawing is. So this drawing is from the left side of the engine, so I'm standing on the left side of the engine because I need to follow this exact order of how to tighten these bolts. So I want to make it easy on myself and be standing on the same side as the drawing, as the picture is taken from. This manual says that the cylinder head cover, or the valve cover that we just put on, the acorn nuts need to be tightened evenly to 14 foot-pounds in the order shown. So 14 foot-pounds is about 20 Newton meters. And that's going to be the easiest mark for us to go by. So that's what we're going to be aiming for. I'm going to put the manual here. Now, when torquing multiple bolts, you don't ever want to go straight to the final torque spec. So I'm not going to go to 20 right off the bat. I'm going to go to 10. And then I'm going to go back and do it in the same order again, and I'm going to go to 20. And why is this torque, why is this all so important? Well, with this many bolts holding down one cover, if this bolt is torqued to, it's supposed to be 14 foot-pounds. Let's say you don't use a torque wrench and you torque this one to 20 foot-pounds, and you torque this one to 14, and this one here to 17, and this one to 12. This gasket is going to be unevenly squeezed, and this cover will be unevenly tightened on the engine, and therefore where the lightest amount of torque is, that's where the oil will start leaking out. So we want to make sure that all these are tightened to the exact same tightness or torque spec. And why do we have to do it in a certain order? If the gasket gets tightened too much in one place and not enough in another, in the wrong order, that could compress it too much in one spot before it gets compressed. Like, how do I explain it? It needs to be compressed. This gasket needs to be squeezed from the center moving out. So the pressure needs to be applied evenly, starting at the center and moving in an outward direction. So that's why the numbers on this start with here in the middle. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the center of this is tight. And then it's going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to do all of them to 10 Newton meters. And then we're going to do all of them again to 20 Newton meters. So have your torque wrench ready. And remember, you don't want to have your hand on this part of the torque wrench while you're torquing the bolts or the nuts, because it affects this reading. You should be pulling from the handle only. If you want to keep your finger up here to keep it on the nut, that's fine. Don't press super hard, because that will also affect it, but it's a good idea to keep a finger here just to keep your socket on the nut. So this is bolt 1, and I'm going to try my best to film this. And the torque wrench, this kind of torque wrench does not ratchet, so that's why I'm taking it off and putting it back on so many times. Looks almost all right. That's 10. So I'm done with that one for now. And already, even though I've only tightened one, I'll bet you the rest of these are not finger tight anymore. Yeah, some of them are definitely not. All right, number 2. about 10. Number 3. There's 10. Number 4. There's 10. Number 5 is the front right corner. Six. And number 8. Okay, so now all 8 of these are torqued to 10 Newton meters, which is approximately 7 foot-pounds. Now we need to do it again, and we're going to go to 20 this time. So this time when I start off tightening these, it's going to start out at 10. Like as soon as I start moving the torque wrench, it's going to jump up to 10 pretty quick, and we got to turn it and it's going to get pretty tight. As you're doing this, it's actually going to want to spin your engine off of your table. So you're going to have to keep one hand on your engine while you turn this. And don't be surprised if you see my hand shaking as I'm going, because 20 is making it pretty tight. And then you got to do it one-handed while trying to hold the camera and hold the engine, you know, and I'm weak. All right. Back to number 1, which is this one. Yes. So right off the bat, it's jumping to 10, quickly making its way up. I'm already to 15. Yeah, that's pretty tight. So if I don't put a hand on this engine and I start pulling this, it's not long before this thing wants to spin. The engine wants to spin off of, roll out of place. those two. Three. Four. Five. 6. Eight. Whew. All right. Go ahead and put that 12mm socket back. You can put your torque wrench back in the box. And now we will move on to the countershaft sprocket cover. So I don't know if you, I don't remember, I think you guys took this off in the beginning. It goes right here. That's the countershaft sprocket. adjust the camera here. This is the countershaft sprocket, and it's got this little locking bracket on it. These are 10mm bolts. So you'll need your 10mm wrench or socket. And this kind of went on in a strange way. So the socket goes on pretty easy. You know, it just kind of fits on here like that. And if you notice on this countershaft sprocket shaft, it's got this little ridge that goes through this groove. This goes in the groove. So this goes on, but these holes have to line up with the holes on the sprocket. So if you just push it on all the way like this, there's nothing you can do. You can't move it. You have to put it in the groove and then spin it in the groove until the holes line up, and then pull the sprocket to the bracket, and then finger tighten the bolts. Come on. There we go. And as you tighten these bolts, it will pull the sprocket to that little bracket, that little locking bracket. And now there's no way this is going to come off. So we got to tighten these two. So if your motorcycle engine is in gear, this will not spin. If it is in neutral, this will spin, in which case you'll have a tough time tightening these because this whole thing is going to want to spin around. You can, if yours is spinning, you can do something like, you know, jam the handle of a screwdriver in here and tighten these two bolts, and having this like locked in here, you know, you might want to lock it into here, push up on it, do whatever you got to do. You're not going to hurt anything. You know, if you scratch up the handle of a screwdriver, it doesn't matter. So tighten those. You don't gotta go crazy. Just make sure they're tight and not gonna come off. And now we can put our countershaft sprocket cover on here. And my countershaft sprocket cover looks like this, and yours should look like this also. Now mine has a little ball bearing inside here. If you have yours in there, great. If yours fell out, hopefully you put it in a bag and you can put it back in here. If you lost yours or it didn't have one, you know, do whatever you can. If you can find it, great. Hopefully you all have one. If not, it's not the end of the world. So this mechanism here, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard to tell what this does. Pieces missing? Yes, there are pieces missing out of this one. That's unfortunate. So underneath this, there's supposed to be this little circle in here that has 3 ball bearings in it. If yours came apart and that little circle is floating around in a bag somewhere, put it in, Just drop it in, and each little ball fits into those 3 little indents down there. If you don't have it, again, not the end of the world. So this is going to fit here, and there's supposed to be, you can see here, there's a dowel right there. Right there. And there's supposed to be one up here. And mine is not stuck in my cover. Maybe I have another one laying around here. Definitely are supposed to have a dowel. Here are my countershaft sprocket cover Allen bolts. Here's my Allen key. I'm gonna see if I have a dowel. Dowels, I think it's there. Oh. Yes. There it is. Perfect. So if you have the ball bearing in here, be careful when you're putting this cover on that it doesn't fall out and roll away. This is sometimes tricky to get on because you got to fit the shift shaft through this hole and not drop the ball bearing. And the ball bearing is going to get pushed against this clutch rod right here. So slowly, carefully push this on. Get the dowel to match up there. And once I have it here, I usually just kind of give it a fist bump. And that gets it close, but it's not all the way, so I'll probably have to maybe I'll lightly tap it with my rubber mallet. Yeah. Good. Now there's no gasket in here. Doesn't need to be. So now I've got 4 bolts to put on. And they are 2 different sizes according to the common motor bolt dealie here. We need 2 A's and 2 B's. So I've got 2 B's and I have 2 A's. But I gotta tell you, this is where I think something's not correct about that drawing, because if I put an A here and an A here, we're good. I put a B here, and watch, you can see that this one goes through here into that. But it's this one here. If I push this thing in all the way, it's going to go in this hole right here. So if I screw it in all the way, it comes this far. This is the end of that hole. If this thing bottoms out, if this screw comes all the way to the end and hits the bottom, hits the end of this before this is flush, before this is tight, it can break. And I feel like this one might be too long. So I'm going to try this one first. See what happens. Yeah, it's getting really tight right here. And look how much I have left. I'm not gonna use a B bolt here. If you don't have, well, actually I don't have any other choice. I'm just not gonna make it all the way tight. I'm going to leave it there. And I suggest you do the same. Unless you have the original Phillips head screw that's going in here, in which case it'll probably be the correct length, and instead of coming to here, it'll probably come to like here, and that's great. The other three are the perfect length. So go ahead and tighten those properly. You have quite possibly the shift lever. If you do, this needs to get put on. If you don't, then you can just skip this step. But this is a 10mm bolt, and the inside of this shift lever, it's got splines. And the shift shaft is splined, and that way it fits on there and it prevents it from slipping. So with all those splines, when this lever gets moved, it turns that shaft. It doesn't move without turning the shaft unless it all gets stripped. And if you look on this shaft, it's got this smooth part right here. When this gets pushed on and the bolt gets pushed through, the bolt will be lined up with that smooth part. So it'll be lined up like that. If you have the shifter on too far or not far enough, when you try and put this bolt on, it's going to end up hitting either these splines or these splines, and it won't fit. So you kind of have to wiggle this thing around until it can go all the way through and line up with the smooth part. Surprisingly, putting this thing on isn't always easy and simple, but it should be about level with the ground. Like, you're not going to put it up here, you're not going to put it down here. Make it about level, and then kind of just press, wiggle, shake, tap. Mine's not going on very easily. I am going to go to my persuader and show it a little bit of love. And as I'm doing it, I'm moving it back and forth to kind of help it find its home. And I'm having to hit it harder than I anticipated. Okay, so I had to hit that a little harder than I thought, but it is what it is. So because it went flush, you see how it went all the way to the engine case? That may have gone too far. I don't know if this 10 mil is going to fit through that smooth part of the shift shaft. So we're going to find out in a moment. I'm very lightly turning it, seeing if it's, yeah, actually it worked. So tightening up a little bit only because it's a little dirty, but I can tell that it found the threads. So it went all the way through from here to here and found these threads, and I can feel it on those threads, so I know that I'm good. I know that it's lined up. And I can see it coming through here. All right, so shifter is good to go. So this is, when you shift this, when you push it down all the way, give it a good like smash down, and then reach in here and try and spin that countershaft sprocket. It should not spin. Now you're in first gear. And then if you go over to your shifter and you barely lift up until it just clicks. Ah, that was too much. If it clicks twice, it still won't spin. I'm going to go back down into first. Well, anyway, what's supposed to happen here is there's a neutral, and that's between first and second. So down all the way is first, and then bringing it up just one little click right there is neutral, and then this will spin freely, and then up again is second. If it still spins, then try lifting this up while spinning this, and that's second. Up again is third. Up again is fourth. Up again is fifth. And then it shouldn't click anymore after that. So then you got to go back down to fourth, third, second. Yeah. Anyway, 1 down, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Those are the gears. You should have a kickstart lever. Hopefully. Looks something like this. Looks kind of like the shift lever. And it's got a bolt here. This is a 12 millimeter bolt, not a 10. And this operates on the same principle. It has a splined shaft right here, and it's got the smooth area, the same thing as the shift shaft, where the bolt's going to go through. And the inside of the Kickstarter is also splined. And when you put this on, you want it to start like this. So the hole facing you, the kick lever pointing to the left. See, on this side, the hole's got like a rod through it. So look at this side that you can get your finger into. And this is pointing to the left. And this is the side that goes on the kickstart shaft. And when you put it on, you don't want the lever to be touching this clutch cover. So what you need to do is kind of line it up So right there is no good. It'd be touching. Once I push it on all the way, it would hit this. So I need to take this off, roll it back a little bit, and that's still, that would be touching. That's bad. So I'm going to pull it off and tilt it back one more, and there we go. That's perfect. Now you got to get the 12 in here, and it's kind of difficult, so what you want to do is pull the Kickstart lever back and see if you can thread this in. Mine's starting to stick, which means it's not lined up perfectly. So I'm going to kind of wiggle it out a little, see if that helps, and that did it. So now it has gone through that smooth part of the shaft. The threads have found, the threads on this bolt went all the way through here and into the bottom, and now it's tightening up. Now you don't want to use a 12mm wrench. You want to use a 12mm socket. You might even want the extension on there. And that's simple. And the very last step is the spark plugs. And this step is strangely one of the most touchy of steps. These threads on the spark plug, there's a lot of them. They're pretty fine. It's extremely easy when putting this into the engine. If it's supposed to go in like this, it's really easy to accidentally start it here and then tilt it too much and start forcing it. And as soon as you do that, these threads start eating up the threads inside the cylinder head and destroying it. And then this cylinder head is pretty much garbage and the engine will not run. It has happened in previous classes. So be careful. What you got to do is kind of get it into the hole as best you can, and then just start turning this tip here. If you grab this and start forcing it, it can start cross-threading immediately. But if you're using just this, you can't really put enough force on it to cross-thread it. It'll stop spinning before it causes any damage. So you kind of put it in and gently wiggle it back and forth and up and down as you twist this. And after you get it to go around like a good 2 or 3 times while still kind of wiggling it, you should feel confident that it's in there, and then you can grab the ceramic portion of the spark plug and give it some twists. So I'll do my best to show you what I'm talking about here. So I kind of have it in there. I think I have it lined up squarely. So I'm kind of twisting and I'm wiggling. Not really finding its home yet. Now it is. I can kind of feel it's able to stand up on itself. Yep, twisting nice and easy. Now I'm confident that it's not going to cross thread, and I can finger tighten it and even reach in there and grab that part that looks like a large nut, twist that, done. And now the other side. Okay, I feel like it's gone around at least twice. This one's a little stickier than the other side, but I know that it went around at least twice when I was twisting just the threaded tip here. So even though it's kind of sticky, I feel good about it. I think I just failed to clean out that spark plug hole as thoroughly as I should have. And that's it. You have rebuilt a CB350 engine. Any questions? Hit me up.